Default. DMG microphone. Mic test. Mic test. I can't hear you. Yep, 1 second. Can you guys hear me now? Mic check. Mic check. Can you put a 1 in the chat? Every time I don't ask if you guys can hear me is when that happens. I swear. There we go. Okay, here we go. Awesome. I don't know why. It's weird. If I don't use this program for a few days, it just deletes my microphone setting, which is weird because I don't use the program, and for some reason it out of all the things, it just takes my audio off. It leaves everything else that I put together on this program. But if I don't use this OBS Streamlabs for like a few days, it takes off my audio. Anyway, start that again. So welcome everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I am feeling better. Had kind of maybe I think the flu, and also suffering a little bit of vertigo, and that's something I've suffered with for many years now, and it's not fun. And when you're doing streams like this and you've got multiple monitors up and you got a light source up staring you in the face, I'll start getting dizzy sometimes because I'm trying to do multiple things looking. And once the dizziness comes in, sometimes vertigo follows with it. So, but yes, feeling much better. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Shout out to all my wonderful mods who do an amazing job. Multitask, work on many other shows. They work for free. We are going to do something. Jennifer, she has to have surgery, I think next month or just before Thanksgiving. So I think since she'll be out, maybe we'll do something maybe mid-December. I think hopefully she'll be back. And then we could do a special show for the mods because I wanted to do that before the year ends because they are amazing. So shout out to Copper Horse, Karen, Dee, Jennifer, Jocelyn, everyone that helps to make this channel safe. So thank you guys. All right, let's get into it. So before we get started, we always like to give back by featuring the missing. Today's missing is China Crawford. She went missing Monday, October 23rd of this year, so almost a month ago, 3 weeks. She went missing in 1600 block Good Hope Road in Washington, D.C. Says her 2012 Mercedes-Benz with a Virginia license plate is also missing. It says in the notes, authorities believe that China's disappearance is suspicious and have described her case as critical missing. She's just 25 years old, 5'7", 120 pounds. If you have any information, you can call 202-727-9099. All right. Just checking the chat here. Okay, good deal. All right. So, tonight's case, we're going to be talking about Susan Powell. We have covered this case a couple of times on this show. This is kind of dear to me because this is from my hometown. This happened back in 2009, so it's been a while. It's a very tragic story with a very terrible ending, which there's many layers to this case. I'm sure many of you know this case, but if you don't, we will dive into it. But since there's so many layers, we're only going to kind of focus on really Susan Powell and her disappearance, but we will go through kind of the basic timeline for anybody that's not familiar with this case. Some of the areas that they believe that she went missing, we're going to kind of focus on that on the second half of the show. I even have footage because, they have some vague ideas of where she's at, but what Josh Powell did, and obviously we're going to go into it, it's kind of tough to know exactly where she could be just because of certain things that he did right after she went missing, which we'll get into. But there are some areas that they put a tracker on his van, and he did some very suspicious activity shortly after she went missing. And so we'll talk about that. I have footage of that area as well, because I every time I take I-80 or go out that way, which is the same way I would take to go look for Dylan Rounds, is in kind of that same area, which is kind of interesting. And so I always kind of make a mental note, especially the last few times I went out looking for Dylan Rounds, to get some footage of the area that they believe she could be at. Like I said, there's thousands of places because he had a lot of time with the car. But as I said, before I get too ahead of myself, we'll definitely dive into it. Like I said, for those that know the story, know that there's a very tragic ending at the with the kids, unfortunately. But like I said, we're really going to just focus on Susan Powell, but we will touch on all angles of this case, sadly. Yeah, Josh is deceased. It's terrible. We'll get into it, but yeah, Josh, Stephen, his father, they passed on. His brother Michael, who's also suspected, or allegedly, I should say, believed to may have had a hand in the disappearance. And he also took his life as well. Yeah, it's a terrible case, but Susan still needs to be found. And so we'll talk about some of the areas that we believe, but we'll get into it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up this video. So what I did is I made a video, and I kind of took some different clips from different sources. And there's actually a podcast that's local out here. It's called The Cold Podcast. They're really amazing. And he's covered this case, and he'll be narrating some of it in this video that I put together. And I'm hoping to reach out to this guy because he's got all the case notes and everything. Since this is now considered a cold case, he's been able to do some like FOIA requests and get his hands on some stuff that hasn't been really made available to the public since he's gotten a hold of the reports. And there's some very interesting things, so we'll go ahead and start playing it. It'll narrate for a bit, and then I'll pause it. And if you have questions, I'll kind of keep my eye on a chat. So here we go. And just let me know how the volume is. If the volume's good, too loud, or too low, just let me know.
Josh Powell and Susan Cox's story began like many others. A young couple falls in love and decides to wed in 2001. They moved to West Valley City, Utah, and then welcomed the births of their two boys, Charlie and Braden. While on the outside everything may have appeared to be picture perfect, the cracks began to show.
They labeled, I think, he was officially labeled a suspect at one point, but obviously they needed to find her body to be able to charge Josh. So there was never an actual, they never charged him officially, unfortunately.
We saw red flags. We felt he was very domineering or spoke so much. We felt the red flags, but not as real serious in the very beginning. As the time went on, we felt there could be some problems.
I think a good way to describe it is we saw that.
And the two that are talking, for those that don't know, that is Susan Powell's father and mother.
Tip of the iceberg, and we had no idea how much more iceberg there was underwater.
Susan confided in her friends about her fights with Josh and how she wished Susan would reveal a darker side to her husband, explaining that she no longer trusts him, and warned how if something happened to her, it may not be an accident, even if it may look like one. The next month, Susan records an eerie video.
So, yeah, they got together. They met up at a LDS because they're Mormon here, because they're here from Utah. And they were both LDS, and they had met because they had kind of like an LDS, couples meeting, and that's how they met. And In the beginning, I think she was a little reserved, but then they finally did get together, and they would end up getting married, obviously, and then having 2 children, Charlie and Braden, who we see here in this picture, who are lovely boys. And we will see an interview of, where's my notes, Charlie, and he's just so adorable. But and it looks like the marriage was kind of rocky. And then to add to all the layers of weirdness, Josh Powell, his father Stephen Powell, he would make advances towards Susan Powell, so that's his daughter-in-law. And yeah, that's you could do a whole show just on him alone, but we're not really going to dive too much into his father. But yeah, he was a big weirdo. He would eventually get arrested for voyeurism. But yeah, he used to film him. When they first got, I think, married, they ended up actually living in Washington and staying with Stephen, Josh's father, for a bit. But then obviously they wanted their own place. And then, of course, during that time that they were living there is when Stephen would make advances and stuff. And anything that Susan did, he would take that as like, oh, she's into me. The guy was just a creep. So anyway, they definitely wanted to get out, get on their own. They would eventually move to West Valley, Utah, which is 10, 15 minutes from where I live. And started life. And it started out okay, I think. And then eventually Josh got very controlling. And his true side came out, his true colors. And ended up only having one vehicle, a van. And so he'd have to drive her to work or wherever. Yeah, he was very controlling.
This is me. July 20.
And so then, just a year before her, a little over a year, grab my notes, she made this video. So she talked to her lawyer and she said that, she didn't feel comfortable and she felt like something may happen to her or the kids. And so her attorney told her to make a documentation of all her belongings and kind of like a will and stuff like that. And so here's this video, and it's so eerie because it's just a little over a year before she would go missing.
29th, 2008. It is 12:33 Mountain Time. Covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us, that our assets are documented. Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after as much as that's possible.
On December 6,
Oh, wow.
2009,
Yeah, West Valley's
after
nice.
attending church services and spending time with her neighbor, at around 5 p.m., Susan decides to lie down for a nap.
The night of Saturday, December 5th, when they went to Josh's work Christmas party. The next afternoon, on Sunday the 6th, Susan called Giovanna after church.
The blanket that she was working on for her.
So now we fast forward to the last day that she was seen, which is on December 6, 2009. Now this is a Sunday. That day, Susan went to church. Josh stayed home. After church at noon, Susan walked home because they only had one vehicle because Josh was controlling like that. And so she came home. Then this last person to ever really see her besides Josh and the boys would be this lady Giovanna, I think it's Giovanna. And I think a family friend. And so she came over, and so she's describing her last interaction with Susan and Josh. So they're at the house. It's Josh, the boys, Susan, and then Giovanna. Now, Giovanna's over there helping Susan with some knitting or something like that. And then Josh is going to make them some lunch, I guess it would be. So here's her describing kind of her last interaction with Susan.
For one of her boys, the yarn was all messed up, and she asked if I could come over and help her with, untangling it. And I said, sure. And then in the background, I could hear Josh saying, well, she can stay for lunch, but we just have enough for her.
Giovanna accepted the invitation. She went over to the Powell house at about 2:45 in the afternoon and sat with Susan in the living room. Josh had Charlie and Braden in the kitchen where he was making pancakes. When they were ready, he brought Susan and Giovanna their individual servings.
And while Susan and I ate and were talking, he then cleaned up the kitchen, put all the dishes in the dishwasher.
And just a little fact, apparently, according to family members and friends, when it came to like cooking and stuff, Josh apparently never cooked, so that was kind of odd. Usually Susan did the cooking. So for him to, make lunch, even though it was pancakes, and then serve them their own individual plates, I think it's very interesting because there's a theory, and what he's serving her, even though it's pancakes, they believe he put something in her pancakes. That's why he instead of just, hey, come get whatever you need, he actually served them individually. And we'll get more into that in a bit, but they believe it's a possibility that he could have put some medication that would make you drowsy, and that'll kind of explain itself here in a bit.
Susan noticed her husband was doing the chores without being asked, a rare occurrence.
He may very well have been putting on a really good show for me, that he was a loving, caring husband, and I bought it.
At one point, Josh even came and draped a blanket around Susan's shoulders.
I thought that was nice, but, I've seen husbands that act that way, so I didn't realize that was not a normal thing for Josh.
Susan told Giovanna she believed she had miscarried the month prior. Giovanna didn't want to press and decided to ask her about it later when the boys were out of earshot.
Then she said she was feeling tired. And so I thought, well, that's perfectly natural. She's going all week long, and if she did, miscarry, then she'll be a little tireder. Anyway, so she said she was going to go just lie down for a little bit in the bedroom,
So notice after she had the pancakes, she felt tired and she needed to go lay down, and I think that'll be a huge detail a little bit later that we'll get into. Jennifer Rochelle, member for 19 months. It's my birthday Sunday. Send cake. Love you all. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for sponsoring and supporting the channel. And I hope you have a speedy recovery after your surgery, which she's going to have, I think, just before Thanksgiving. That's such a bummer. Come the holidays and you got to have surgery. So I hope it's a speedy recovery. And again, thank you so much for everything you have done. Sensi Wackadoodle, member for 11 months. That's so awesome. Mob Crew love. This case is so heartbreaking. It is. And it needs to be solved and give Susan and the boys some closure. But there's still plenty of time to find her. And I think it's totally possible. All right. So the neighbor or the family member, Giovanna, saying that Susan is now tired and she needs to go lay down.
I was like, okay, that's fine.
It was about 4:30. Giovanna just kept working on the tangled yarn. Josh told her he was going to take the boys sledding. Giovanna was focused on the knot and didn't get the hint.
And then he says, well, I really need to lock the front door when I leave. And then I got it. It was like, okay, I should probably leave then. So I cut the yarn and took the messed up yarn home to untangle, and I said, well, I should have this finished by this evening, and he said, well, there's no hurry, just give it to her on Tuesday.
Josh would say that then he and his boys went out to go sledding. This would be the last time anyone outside of that house saw Susan again.
So apparently Josh would go sledding. There's two versions of it. Once he said he went sledding. So after I think she sees him leave with the two boys. But in his first police interview, he actually says he only took one of his sons, but she sees that he takes both sons. So it's kind of weird there. timeline doesn't match up. But either way, it sounds like he did take the boys out somewhere, and then he comes back, I don't know, like an hour or so later. And now, of course, Giovanna's gone, and so now it's just Josh. It's just them, and now this is when I think something happened to Susan, sadly. And we'll talk about what was used, what they believe was used to, unfortunately, take Susan's life. And we'll look at the weapon. And he did try to destroy it, but they believe that there's a good possibility he used a certain thing, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Gail Hurd, thank you so much for the $5 and the support. That means so much. So behind on live shows, and that really helps. Thank you so much for the support. You guys are so amazing. Probably be going live the rest of this week, so it'll be a little busy for me.
In the very beginning, I didn't realize how serious it was, and within 3 or 4 days of her missing, they felt it was a homicide. And then I realized that this was really happening.
When Charlie and Braden aren't dropped off at daycare, police are contacted.
So the next day, so obviously no one outside besides the neighbor, after she leaves, really we don't know what happens. But then the next day, Susan doesn't show up for work. Josh doesn't show up for his job. And so everybody's trying to call both of them, checking in on them, making sure, they're okay. Susan's not answering her phone. Josh is not answering her phone. And so then family members and friends get word of this, get wind of it, and start calling themselves. And then eventually there's a family member or family friend, and then Jennifer Graves, who is Josh's sister, who I absolutely love because, even though she's related to Josh, she knew something was wrong, and she thought Josh was responsible. So anyway, this is what they're mentioning now, is that it's the next day, it's Monday, and nobody's shown up for work. The kids are supposed to be at daycare early in the morning, obviously, because, typically they would be going to work now. And so, as a matter of fact, I think it's Teresa, who's the daycare provider or something like that. She's trying to call them and say, hey, where's the kids? And nobody is answering.
Law enforcement burst into the Powell home and discover no one's there.
The crime scene was interesting because when the police came in, they found an attempted cleanup of blood on the floor near a couch. They saw fans blowing in order to dry the blood.
So Teresa and Josh's sister Jennifer, they would all end up at the house around noon or something like that, or maybe a little bit before, I think. But earlier that day, obviously trying to check to see if the family's home. But the doors are locked. All the windows are the shades are down. They thought it was kind of odd. And then they noticed in, I believe, probably this window, they noticed that there was, the blinds were kind of moving a little bit. Like there was air, like heater air from the vent moving them or something. But it was actually something else. It was actually box fans. So they would get the police out there because they would call 911 to check on them. They searched around the house, couldn't find anything. They kept trying to call Josh and Susan. Susan didn't show up for work. Josh didn't show up for work. So eventually they got permission from Jennifer, Josh's sister, to break one of the windows here so they could get in. And when they get in, it's kind of an eerie scene because it's quiet, but yet there's these box fans that are pointed towards this couch, and we got photos of it. And then they find some odd things.
They saw her purse was in the house with her wallet, and her keys were later discovered.
A few hours later, Josh and the boys return home. He claims the three traveled 25 miles away for a camping trip in the desert along the Pony Express Trail, which is odd considering the frigid temperatures at the time.
So meanwhile, somewhere that Sunday night or early Monday, I can't remember. I think it's late Sunday night. I think he leaves somewhere between 10 or midnight. And he leaves from their home in West Valley City, which is here on this D right here. And he heads west and then goes south and then down into what is known as Simpson Springs. Now, this is during December time, and there is a big blizzard storm that is actually rolling in. And Josh is supposedly going camping last minute with the boys. Now, as a person who's avid camper, who grew up camping, you don't go camping in the winter. I mean, if you have like an RV or, obviously a camper, that's one thing. But just to go, with a minivan with two young boys, with a blizzard coming in, it's absolutely reckless. And yeah, it just absolutely makes no sense that you'd be go camping. There's nothing out there. It'd be great to see in the spring or fall or even summer. It'd be a little hot, but during the wintertime, you wouldn't want to be out in this area, because if you break down, as you can see, it's very desolate. There's nothing out here except mines and it's very desolate. And so you're going out here with two young boys, and you've got a snowstorm rolling in, and you could get trapped out there and potentially succumb to the elements.
Josh had Susan's phone on him with the SIM card removed. When questioned by police, Josh adamantly says he doesn't know where Susan is. But in another room, a detective speaks to young Charlie.
Susan,
he says Susan came with them on the trip, but didn't come back.
So your mom stayed at the park?
Yeah.
Where did she stay at the park? Do you know where?
She stayed at Dinosaur National Park.
The way he says Dinosaur National Park, and I'll explain that for anybody that's wondering what that reference is. I'm pretty sure I have an idea, but I'll explain that here in a minute, because we'll actually look at his interview a little bit. But right now we're just kind of breaking down the timeline, and then we're going to kind of go back and break down his little trip, and then also what may have happened to Susan. But this would be when Josh came back, and they're interviewing Josh in one room, and then they're obviously interviewing Charlie, who's the oldest of the two sons, and asking, what happened to mommy, and that's where he says that, we went to Dinosaur National Park, and I'm just going to go ahead and play it.
Where at the park? No?
At that time?
Where a Christmas park.
3 and 4, maybe? 2 and 3, 3 and 4? Something around in there.
Oh, you, Charlie, are a big boy to wait for me. Thank you. Okay, so Charlie, when you guys came home from camping, who came home with you?
My dad.
And
my mom stayed at Dinosaur National Park.
Your mom stayed there?
Yeah.
How do you know your mom stayed?
Because I was coming.
Because you were coming?
Yeah.
So your mom stayed at the park?
Yeah.
Where did she stay at the park? Do you know where?
She stayed at Dinosaur National Park.
Oh, he's so cute. It's so heartbreaking. The way he says Dinosaur National Park. Oh, it's so cute. But what I think he's referring to where they went, which is Simpson Springs. And they did confirm that he did go out there. If anyone's wondering, there was actually a sheep herder that was out there and saw a guy. Because obviously it's a desolate area. I doubt there's many people driving by. And he did see a blue van with a white male. He couldn't see anything else, but so they did corroborate that Josh did go out there and we'll look more at the map here, just kind of give you an idea where that's at. But when he says Dinosaur National Park, I think he's just talking about this area. I'd assume, there could be many different reasons why he's calling it that. Maybe his dad said, hey, this is where dinosaurs, because there's no Dinosaur National Park out there. Yeah, there's one in Ogden, but we don't have one out. Ogden's Dino Park, Dinosaur National Monument, or Ogden's Dino Park. Yeah, because there's not one out there that way. So I think he's just, because he tells earlier, he tells the lady that how they got there was via an airplane. But I think he says that because Josh used to take them to the airport and they'd watch the airplanes take off. So obviously, as a kid's imagination is kind of mixing old memories, and stuff like that, and just imagination. But when he says Dinosaur National Park, I think he's just referring to where they went, even though that's not a dinosaur national park.
Do you know where at the park? No?
No. My mom stayed where a crystals are.
Where what are?
Where crystals are.
The crystals? Crystals?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Crystals?
He could have, yeah. That's a great, yeah, because you would see a lot of bones out there. I've been out that way, not as much in that area, but an area like it, and they're kind of more or less the same. And yeah, you would probably see. So he says, Mommy's staying where the crystals are. So you have Topaz Mountain, which is not far from Simpson Springs. I think Simpson Springs is about right here. You go another 20 miles or so, Topaz Mountain's out there. The geobed rock is out there. And so what he means is the crystals is like topaz, all the different little geobed rocks, and that they're all out in that way. So obviously when he says crystals, he's talking about this area here.
Your mom stayed where the crystals are?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Crystals are things that grow in rocks that aren't colorful.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of areas where people will go out there. There's some YouTubers. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people, but yeah, you can just go out there and get quartz and different things that are just laying about. Because yeah, it's a big geobed for that kind of stuff.
They even have a crystal set that grows all crystals that live in Dinosaur National Park.
Oh, all the crystals live at Dinosaur National Park?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, come out.
I think that confirms that, he's really just talking about that area, because if he's saying that's where the crystals are at, that's basically near Topaz area.
Me? And I might need to talk to you again, okay, Charlie? Is that okay? Okay. All right, Charlie. You told me that you went camping with your mom, your dad, and your little brother to Dinosaur National Park, right?
Yeah.
And you said that Mommy stayed at the park, right?
Yeah, that's not a
How come Mommy
bad
stayed?
theory. The reason they deduced that because obviously you do have the geobed, is they actually went there, I think, a year or two prior. The whole family went to that actual topaz or the geobed area, and so they think that's why he's mentioning these crystals and stuff.
Because it had so much pretty on where because it has so much pretty where a crystal grows.
It had so many pretty things where the crystals grow?
Yeah.
So why did Mommy stay?
Because there was flowers and crystals that was colorful.
That was what?
That was colorful.
Colorful?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did somebody say Mommy wanted to see them, or did you see Mommy say that? What did Mommy say?
I see Mommy said that.
What did Mommy say?
She said she wanted to stay.
Mommy said that?
Yeah.
It's not clear what Charlie was referring to, or if he was just using his imagination. One theory, though, is that perhaps Charlie was referencing the Dugway geobeds, an area filled with specialized rocks that contained crystals. Not only had the Powell family actually visited this
And
location
yeah, it's a really cool
year-
place because you really don't have to like mine or anything. You can just go to a hill and start just kind of digging around, and you can find cool little crystals, quartz, whatnot, in this area.
earlier, but curiously, it's also near where Josh says he and the boys had camped out.
One of our detectives just interviewed your children, and your children are telling our detectives that Mom went with you guys last night, and that she didn't come back.
She did not go with us.
Okay. Well, with that, just getting that information, you're not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to let you leave.
There's nothing that happened. She was not with us.
The boys
And
are
if my
not
kids
alive,
said that-
sadly.
So your kids lie then? Do your kids lie?
Sometimes they do.
We'll touch on it a little bit,
If
but
they said that she was with us,
it's a terrible.
they know that's not true.
So
And
if they
if
say
they said that she was with us,
So this is his second interview. So he got interviewed that first day when he got back, late that Monday evening. And then this is the second interview, which would have been Tuesday the 8th. And they interview him for many hours because we'll look at his interview a little bit more, but there's, I think this YouTube video is literally called, the one that has his 3-hour interview or whatever. It's literally called The Masterclass of Saying Nothing, because he just literally dances around questions. He plays stupid, and, he clearly suffers from ADD, but I think he uses that to his benefit, and he'll start just rambling on, about other stuff, and he does whatever he can to minimize any, helping to help find Susan.
then
And here, so that interview with Charlie the son, that was during the second police interview, so the 8th, and that's when, because they had been interviewing Josh for at least a couple of hours, and then, they're at the same time they were interviewing Charlie, and then eventually Charlie's said, yeah, Mommy came with us, but she didn't come back, and so just before the interview was going to end, they come in and say, hey, you know what? They already had their suspicions about Josh because he's just not wanting to help. But now, after hearing what Charlie said, now they're like, okay, this guy clearly knows something.
I guess that would put her out the Pony Express.
Okay, and that's my concern.
Investigators conduct a search of the desert but find no evidence of Susan. Yet, there was a mine located 30 miles away that reportedly was doused in gasoline and set on fire. Interestingly, Josh allegedly told a work colleague on a previous occasion that the best place to dispose of a body is down a mine shaft.
I believe Josh killed Susan because he wanted an easy way out. The relationship was suffering. She had already conveyed to family members that there was no more romantic interest. He didn't touch her. He didn't hold hands with her. There was nothing happening physically in their relationship. There was a lot of infighting. And I believe that was an easy way out for him instead of dealing with the fuss of child custody and child support.
At the time of this taping, Susan's body has still not been recovered. Coming up, a look into Josh's family provides unsettling new details.
She decided to detour from the school grounds to Josh and Susan's house. She pulled into the cul-de-sac, her van rolling partway up the driveway of the Powell house.
Okay, so now that we got the basic timeline, and yeah, we'll touch on the kids just a tad. but we're really going to focus on what may have happened to her, in her last moments, and then what did Josh do with her. That's going to be the two main focuses of tonight's show. But here's a picture. This picture here is when he's moving later, when he goes moving to Washington to live with his father.
Making first tracks in the virgin snow.
There was no tire tracks coming out of the garage. There was no footprint.
So this is going back to the day that they arrived, because, Josh is right now, he's with the boys and Susan, most likely, out in Simpson Springs. And this is Teresa, and I think who's talking is Jennifer Graves, Josh's sister. And this is her kind of story of when they got to the house, trying to look, because they obviously no one showed up for work, and so they're worried sick. And so her account of everything.
Pounded on the door and pounded on the door. I didn't get any answer, so I was on a school run. I had other children that I was caring for and that I needed to get to school, so I went back to my van and I pulled up her emergency contact register. It's on the form, and so I called the emergency contact, which was Jennifer Graves, and then I went to drop the kids off at school.
Jennifer Graves was Josh Powell's sister.
I woke up kind of feeling a little bit relieved and happy and looking forward to, and we got that phone call from Debbie, and it was just devastating. Completely threw us for a loop again.
Jennifer told Debbie she hadn't heard from her brother or sister-in-law that morning.
We'll definitely talk about that. It's going to be towards the end.
She grabbed her kids and her mom, Teresa, and started driving the snowy roads north toward Josh and Susan's house. Jennifer lived in West Jordan. That's about a 15-minute drive away on a good weather day from Sarah Circle. While on the way, Teresa dialed 911. It was 9:53 a.m.
My son and his wife and their 2 children haven't responded to anything this morning. They normally would go to work and take their children to the daycare 2.5 hours ago now.
Okay. All right, I have them notified. They're going to be in or out. They're responded to 6252 West Sarah Circle, which is 3945 South.
We couldn't get in.
West Valley City Patrol officers Jerry Brady and Matt Rhodes were the first to arrive in response to the 911 call. They showed up within minutes at 10:02 a.m. to find Teresa, Jennifer, and her kids out front of the house. They pounded on the door and shouted. No response. The officers checked all of the doors and windows. All were locked.
I would love if I could get Dave I want to say Crowley, Dave Cowley on the show, or at least maybe see if I can get some info from him. But we'll discuss that. But thank you, Cole, for sharing that. That's awesome. Yeah, Heavy D has searched for Susan a couple times. They've also searched for Dylan Rounds, who I've been out searching for as well. And yeah, they're an amazing group.
Attempted to peer into the garage through a window there, only to find it.
So out in that area in the geo bed, you can just there'll just be a mound, and you can dig, and you can get all sorts of crystals. That's what's unique about Utah. I mean, I'm sure there's other areas and states, obviously, but in this particular area, there's a lot of mining. We have a lot of mining. I mean, obviously there's a lot of mining everywhere, but in that particular area of our state, there's a lot of mining. And but yeah, there's areas where you can just go to like a dirt hill, and you can just kind of dig out the hill a little bit, and it's free. And yeah, you can get like I said, quartz, crystals. Not sure all the exact rocks that are out there, but yeah, it's kind of cool.
Blocked by a blanket. In fact, they noticed all of the windows were covered. The blinds in the large bay window on the front of the house seemed to sway, as if blown by hot air rising from a furnace vent. Short of options, the police turned to Terry and asked her permission to break a window. It took some convincing, but she agreed. Broken window, and found himself in the front room of the Powell house.
So this is what they discovered. So they found that, as you can see, we got 2 box fans, And as you can see, they're actually pointing. We'll see the picture of the couch here in a minute, but as you can see, they're actually pointed to this couch. And they believe this is where the attack happened, that she was probably sleeping on this couch, and one or two things may have happened. But we'll talk about that here in just a minute.
The first thing he noticed were two fans aimed at wet spots on the carpet and couch. They were causing the blinds to flutter, not hot air from the furnace. Toys were scattered around the floor. A stereo had been left on. It blared a broadcast from a local radio station. They started searching room by room. The upstairs bedrooms were all empty. So was the basement.
I have
Checking
not.
the garage, the officers noticed the family's minivan was gone. Teresa and Jennifer also came inside to see if anything looked amiss.
While I was at the house, I'd had this overwhelming feeling that he had done something to her already, because I'd seen her purse there.
So here's her purse. These are actual photos of that day when they walked in. And then actually what you see to the right, I believe, is the actual rug doctor that was used to probably clean up part of the crime scene, which is very eerie because it's actually just sitting right next to her purse. It's very creepy. But yeah, that's her purse. And then yeah, once she saw that, and this is Josh's, biological sister, and she's already clearly she must have known that Josh was kind of different, I guess, growing up, because for her to already suspect that he had something to do with it, instead of kind of being, because of brother and sister, you would think you would put up all notion until it's, unreasonable doubt. But she said she had a weird feeling from the start.
I'd gone through it, and her driver's license, her Sam's Club card, her temple commitment, they were all in the purse. Why would she walk away without that? That just seemed like a very abnormal thing for her to do for any significant length.
Okay. So this is what they believe happened: is she was most likely sleeping on this couch, probably because if you're just coming in, we learned about the witness that was last saw Susan. They were having like a late lunch. Josh made pancakes and served them each individually, and that was odd in itself because usually Susan does the cooking, Josh doesn't do the cooking, and it was being very nice, and she just thought he was kind of putting on a show or a front. And then after she ate the pancakes, she ended up getting very tired right after. And they believe that it's a good possibility he put something in her pancakes, some kind of like sedative. And so she was probably asleep. And then maybe had the boys, who knows, in the other room, probably put them down for a nap. And then unfortunately either strangled her or blunt force, because they found blood, I would assume probably hit her over the head with this acetylene torch. Or no, not the acetylene torch, impact driver, I'm sorry. He uses the acetylene torch to destroy the impact driver, which we're going to look at. So here's some areas, but they found, obviously everything was tried to be cleaned up, but obviously he missed some spots. And they found little blood droplets. And that's, as you can see, the couch is sitting right to our left here, the arm. And so they believe her head was this way and maybe got hit over the head. And this could have been something that she could have coughed out and sprayed some blood. And he might have cleaned the carpet but missed these areas. And they were able to test it, and it was her blood. So, sadly, that's where they believe she was attacked. And the weapon that was used, so when they first searched the van, they found this bag. And in the bag was these components, like trash. And at first they didn't think much of it, but they thought this was odd. But what we're looking at, because they didn't know what the hell this was. When you're looking at this, it's like, what is this? And they noticed, because obviously she had done a video where she, did the year prior, where she documented all of her, things that she owned. And she goes through all of the tools and everything. And anyway, there's an impact driver. There was one that wasn't accounted for after she went missing. And they believe this is the impact driver. And so we'll do an overlay of the... Oh, here we go. So as you can see, so these little things here, they are wires. And they believe these are the inside components to the impact driver. As you can see, there's like four wires here. And I just took one off the internet. This isn't the actual impact driver of the brand that they had, so it might be a little bit different, but they're more or less the same, obviously. But they believe that's the wiring. And then if you notice, you can kind of almost make up the body of it, the top half anyway. And that's where the not a big tool guy, but I want to say Chuck or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, they believe this is the remnants. And why you have all that white stuff is that he had a drywall or sheetrock when he used a acetylene torch, because he first tried to douse it with gasoline and burn it, but obviously this stuff wasn't going to melt. It wasn't hot enough. So he had to take a acetylene torch, and they believe that white stuff caked onto it was because he had it on top of some sheetrock or drywall, which kind of burnt into it, leaving this white residue on it. But and why would you need to destroy an impact driver unless that was possibly the weapon that was used? That's the only thing they could think. I mean, there's no reason you would need to destroy an impact driver by taking a acetylene torch to it. I mean, that's overkill. So clearly they believe this was the weapon. And this picture is significant because this picture was taken, I'm not sure, but it was taken before she went missing. And it just so happens that on top of this shelf is that impact driver. And after, like I said, she went missing, there was one impact driver that was unaccounted for, and it's this one. So it's kind of eerie that a random picture that was taken. And you can see it's, as a matter of fact, as we zoom back out, oh, shoot, I'm sorry, I went too far. Guess what it's sitting next to? It's sitting next to the couch. So, kind of eerie seeing that picture. Let me see here. So, I'm sorry. Did I? Okay. Let me get back.
Knowing what to do, and we just sat around waiting.
Jennifer's phone rang just before 5:30 p.m. The caller ID showed it was Josh.
The Internet Detective, great coverage of this extremely heartbreaking case. Thank you so much for the $25. That is so awesome. Thank you so much for the support. It is a heartbreaking case. For those that are just tuning in, I am from Utah. I lived here, born and raised. This happened here in my hometown. As a matter of fact, when I was younger, well, not that young, but I was in my mid-20s, I remember in 2000, that happened in 2009. I remember, that late 2009, early 2010, when I was driving on State Street in 33rd South, which is in the heart of Salt Lake City, which is not far from West Valley City. There was a billboard that used to be the same billboard, and it just had this, I don't know, boring company on it. And anyway, it was so crazy because that billboard had like the same picture on it for years that I can remember. And I'll never forget, like, we were driving. I don't know what I was doing, but I was driving down the road, and I look at the billboard, and it completely caught my eye because I'm so used to having that same thing, and it's like when a shop, gets torn down and a new one's up, you're like, whoa, whoa. And yeah, here's this billboard that's finally changed after decades. And I don't know if it's that long, but yeah, it was Susan Powell's, missing, missing poster on the billboard. And yeah, I'll never forget that. It was so crazy and surreal to have that memory. And it's very vivid because it was just like that billboard was bland and always had been the same thing for many, many years. And then, yeah, here was Susan Cox missing billboard. It was sad.
Josh. She answered and shouted into the phone, asking her.
Okay, so now that we kind of talked about how they believe she was what was used, and most likely, or at least one theory of how she was attacked, sadly. Now we're going to skip to, so obviously Josh had been missing since Monday morning because he didn't show up for work. Obviously everybody's been missing early morning of Monday. And it wasn't until about 5 p.m. So after obviously the family's broken into the house and they're finding all these weird items in her purse. And obviously they've been trying to call Josh and Susan. Nobody knows anything. Finally, Josh calls his sister Jennifer. And so here is her account of that.
It was Josh.
Knowing what to do, and we just sat around waiting.
Jennifer's phone rang just before 5:30 p.m. The caller ID showed it was Josh. She answered and shouted into the phone, asking her brother where he'd been and if Susan was with him. Josh said he was at work and he had the boys. They were fine. Jennifer said she knew that wasn't true. He wasn't at work.
That's awesome.
Okay, all right. Josh admitted he wasn't at work. He had taken the boys camping, but said they'd been stranded by the snowstorm. Jennifer asked again, "Where's Susan?" Josh said she was at work.
We're not going to buy pop out of that machine.
It made it tough. We did get a domestic violence advocate over there to eventually sit down and kind of entertain the kids, but Josh was not pleased with that, and it diverted his attention even more.
But what else could they do? Josh wasn't under arrest and didn't have to be there.
So yeah, he finally reaches out. He's in Lehigh, I think, when he called her. And then he drives to so obviously he's talking to his sister for the first time. And she's explaining the levity of the situation. Hey, there's cops here. Everybody's looking for you, your wife, the sons, worried sick about you. Where are you? He's in Lehigh. And she's like, yeah, you need to get over here. We got questions, and is Susan with you? And of course, he's like, no, Susan's at work. And she says, no, Susan is not at work. And then, so she says, yeah, get over here. And what does Josh do? He drives to Susan's work at 5:30, and calls her on her phone. And of course, this is all premeditated. He calls and leaves a voicemail. And I tried to get the recording, but I just couldn't find it. I'll find it next on part 2. But anyway, he leaves this little voicemail, of course, saying, "Oh, hey, sorry, I forgot it was Sunday. I thought it was Saturday. That's why we went camping. I thought it was Saturday night, not Sunday night. And anyway, I'm here outside your work, ready to pick you up." Even though he just got done talking to his sister like 20 minutes ago, who told her that she didn't show up for work. She's missing. Anyway, just trying to produce some kind of alibi. Who knows? And then finally he shows up at the house very late. They're all pissed off because he just kept stalling. And then finally they have to take him down to the police station, but he takes the boys with him. And during that first interview, they're having a tough time because Josh isn't very cooperative. And then whenever there's like a serious question, he uses the kids as kind of like a distraction. So whenever, he doesn't want to answer something, the kids, he pays attention to the kids. And so this is the cop describing the first interview.
Forcing the issue with the boys might have ended the interview.
The last thing I want is him to not talk to me.
So Ellis dealt with the situation as best he could.
So when you got to your destination, 20 miles, possibly 20 miles down the Plain Express, what did you just stay on the road? Did you pull off on the side of the road?
No, they have trails that you can drive on, and
So you can hear the kids in the background.
How far off the trail did you go?
I don't know, a mile or something. I don't know.
Josh told Ellis he had mixed up the days in his head, that when he'd left on Sunday night, he thought it was Saturday. He realized the mistake only after waking on Monday morning. By then, it was too late to call his work and beg forgiveness.
Yeah.
On the way home, he stopped at a car wash in the city of Lehigh. That didn't make a whole lot of sense. The roads were still...
Lehigh, yeah, Footloose. Yeah, it's kind of wild. Yeah, we've had a few little films filmed out in here in Utah because we have the Sundance Film Festival. So yeah, we definitely have a lot of filming and stuff going like that, and up and coming video producers and directors trying to put out videos for the Sundance Film Festival, which is in Park City. But yeah, Lehigh. So what we're looking at this map here is, let me pull this up on this other one here. So this is the trip that he took, just the whole trip itself. Close that real quick here. We'll get back, but yeah, it was really strange the way his route takes. So here is his home right here, and so they left at like about around midnight, Sunday night. He claims that he thought it was Saturday night, even though he knows that he had to have known that obviously his wife went to church on Sunday. I don't know, for someone who's LDS, I would think Sunday would be a day you would just when it's around that day, because obviously go to church, it's a big day for him anyway. But yeah, supposedly this is the route he took, and this is Simpson Springs here, and they stayed, he said when he got there that they slept for like 4 hours or something like that. I mean, this is the oddest trip. I mean, who goes camping in the middle of midnight, last minute, with two boys, where tons of things could go wrong, and you got a blizzard. This is December. You just don't go camping, period. I mean, unless you have like I said, if you had an RV and, the proper equipment, but with two boys, so many things could go wrong. It's just, nothing made sense. And then after he made s'mores and they had a fire, then he left. And instead of coming back up this way, he went east and he came into Lehigh for whatever reason. Stopped at the car wash to clean his car, which is very obviously suspicious because it just snowed and it's probably continuing to snow. And I'm sure many places, many are familiar with snow, and when the guys come through to pave the roads, or to clear the roads, excuse me, they, throw down salt and stuff, and that stuff gets caked up on your car, and your car gets so dirty from the salt and mud and all, just everything. And so it'd be a dumb time to be, doing a car wash, because by the time you drive home, I guarantee that car looked exactly the same. So anyway, it was very odd that he did that. And I think this trip, and we're going to come back to it, is very important because I think he dropped her body off somewhere in this area, and then he would come back to pick her up. But I don't think in the original, I don't think he ever dropped her body off here. I think he thought about it, especially if he knew that sheep herder had saw him. I think he thought about it and decided to keep her body in the van, and then somewhere from here to Lehigh, I think he, for a temporary spot, dumped her off. But then I think he moved it a second time. But we'll dive into that in a little bit. Yes, I did. When I was a kid, I did many times. Oh my gosh, that was so fun. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's really cool. Think of the Polar Express. That was like the Polar Express for us as kids. It was the closest thing. You got to go on this old train, but it was beautiful. It was called the Heber Creeper. Really cool. It'd go around this area. It was really cool.
Covered in salt, slush, and grime from the snowstorm. Ellis wanted to know which car wash. Josh said he wasn't sure. After washing the car, Josh said he drove north to Susan's work. They only had the one car, so Josh typically took Susan to work in the morning and sometimes picked her up in the afternoon. He couldn't explain how she might have made it to work that morning, considering he had the minivan out in the desert.
About going on a camping trip with his sons.
So I think there's a lot of misconception because for those that may not be familiar with the Mormon community. Now, obviously, I'm not Mormon LDS, but obviously I've been, accustomed to their religion. And yeah, LDS, they're amazing, nice people. I mean, they get a lot of heat, I think, in some regards. But I think what people don't realize or may not know is there's two groups. You got the LDS, which is just the regular, and then you have the FLDS. That's the extreme LDS. Those are the ones that believe in polygamy and 8 wives and your Warren Jeff. Those are the ones that are the scary one. And not all FLDS. Keep that in mind as well. But yeah, it's really a lot. The FLDS gets a bad name from that. But yeah, I think, you probably mentioned that because, yeah, you got Lori Vallow, who kind of started up as LDS. But then, again, she kind of drifted off into her own thing. So I don't know if it's not really Mormon. It's kind of an offshoot or the extremist that kind of, there's always people that are going to ruin it for the others, But yeah, as a general, Mormons they're a great community. I love, I love Utah.
However, suspicions didn't fall on Josh alone.
I think Josh had help from his family. I know his brother Michael had helped him. I didn't know that at the time.
Police believe Josh's brother Michael may have played a role in disposing of Susan's remains, especially after a cadaver dog picked up the presence of human decomposition in his trunk, but further tests were not definitive. In 2013, Michael committed. Josh's father, Susan Powell, on the other hand, is a whole other story.
Yeah.
In the years after Susan's disappearance, Stephen and Josh would conduct a smear campaign against her, claiming she ran off with another man and threatening to release her diaries.
So we're just going to fast forward a little bit, and then, like I said, we're going to get into some possibilities where she could be, her body's at. But just to kind of finish the story for those that may not know, I know people have already kind of talked about it for those that are new to it, but so after, obviously they could, even though they suspected Josh, they couldn't formally arrest him because they didn't have a body, they didn't have, the weapon. They just didn't really have much, to actually get a convict, So unfortunately, they needed to find Susan. So anyway, obviously there was a lot of scrutiny against Josh because obviously he was being super shady. I mean, obviously it was clear that he knew something. And reporters were just swarming him. And so eventually it got too much for him, so he ended up moving back to his father for a bit, and he moved to Puyallup, I hope I pronounced that right, Washington, where his father's at, Stephen. And then they obviously, they're talking about the smear campaign. They were saying, oh, because the whole thing was is that they were saying, oh, well, she just ran off with another man. And then apparently he had her journal, her diary, and claimed that there was stuff in there that said, that she was in, I don't want to get into her diaries, but there was sensitive information that supported what they were trying to feed to the media. But this actually backfired big time, and this would actually end up in the result of Stephen getting arrested.
But in 2011, the truth behind Susan Powell came out as he was arrested and charged with voyeurism and child pornography. Evidence collected by authorities showed Josh's father was obsessed with Susan and would continually lust after her.
Puyallup. That's right. Oh man, it's
disturbing, and they were starting to
That's right. That's a tough one. Puyallup.
remember things, and that really scared Josh.
No, they're not. So I'm not playing the audio of this. So after Stephen would do some time, obviously for having some very terrible and disturbing images on his computer, he was, he was a voyeur. Then sadly, February 5th, 2012, Josh had his own little place here with the boys. Now, the grandparents are obviously fighting to try to get custody of the two boys because they knew this guy was not fit to have the kids. And the court system failed them completely. This is completely not only just Josh's fault, obviously, but the court system, the judge absolutely failed him in this case. They should have never gave him rights. They should have took the kids away immediately. Now, what's a shame is they were supposed to have a visit. It was supposed to be because Josh was getting rights to, have parental visits, but they were supposed to be held at like a third-party location, if I recall right. And what happened is, I can't remember, but for some reason it ended up being at his house. But of course he needed, someone there, child protective, counselor to be there, to make sure everything's going good. And so she goes to drop the kids off. The kids run up to the door. And as she's walking up to the door, he rushes the kids in and slams the door in her face. So this counselor, Elizabeth, she can't get in. And as she was walking up to the door, she could smell gasoline and immediately fears the worst, that something's not right. And she pounded on the door. She can hear saying Josh talking to the kids for something like, hey, I got a gift for you, I think, or something like that. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into it. Anyway, she goes and she calls 911. 911 failed her because she was telling her, hey, this is the situation. This is Josh Powell's got, he's got supervised visits. I'm supposed to be there. He slammed the door on me. I smelled gasoline. And 911 wasn't taking it seriously. And so there were so many facets that failed these kids, sadly. And anyway, Josh took his life and his son's life and burnt down the house in the process. Without getting into any more graphic details than that. It was absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. And this poor lady's got to live with that for the rest of her life. And just an absolute monster. And so, yeah, he took many secrets to him with the grave. So now we're going to back up to where could Susan be at? And so here's just a little bit of a timeline just to give you, I think it might be better to kind of look at the calendar just to kind of give you an idea. So Sunday, December 6th, this is when Susan was last seen. and then the camping trip that they go on. And keep in mind, this is like late Sunday night, like 10 or 11, if not midnight, when they leave. Obviously, people start getting word that that Susan didn't show up for work, and the kids aren't in daycare. Josh didn't show up for his work, and then eventually Josh comes back, and then of course he has his first interview. Then on the second interview on Tuesday, that's when they interviewed the boy, Charlie, and that's when he tells them, yeah, Mom was with us, but she didn't come back. And so they already had their suspicions because Josh was acting weird. And we're going to look at a little bit at his police interview. And so we'll leave it right there because I think that's when we do a little bit of his interview here. Yeah, same here, KP. Because like I said, it happened in my hometown, so it's absolutely terrible. And it's been, what, 13, 14 years? So there's the
to Salt Lake City International Airport. It was about 10 p.m. on the night of Tuesday, December 8th, 2009.
So after having that second police interview, they seized his van. Now they seized his van, and they were only they told him like, hey, we're seizing your van and we're giving, we got a search warrant for your house. Give us a couple hours, we'll search your van, and then you can take your van and go home. So if you can just hang out in the lobby or whatever. Well, Josh, of course, didn't want to wait, and which is terrible because it's too bad they didn't hold him there, because what they were doing is after they searched the van, they put a GPS tracker on it because they were hoping he was going to do what he probably did coming up, which is, since he didn't want to wait a couple hours for them to give him back his van after they're done searching it, he got a taxi and he took it to the airport so he could go to the Hertz rental car place and rent a Ford Focus. And so here is that timeline.
Josh had just been grilled for nearly 4 hours by Detective Ellis Maxwell about the disappearance of his wife, Susan, the day before.
He left his kids with his mom and sister.
Yeah.
When I reached out to them that evening and that following day.
So yeah, KP brings up a great point. I forgot to mention that. And like I said, there's so many layers. But yeah, the kids had just gotten comfortable enough to start telling more to the grandparents. Yeah, and they believed that one of the reasons probably Josh did this was because the boys were eventually, obviously, were getting a little older. And obviously, he was probably afraid that they were going to say something that would obviously give away where she could be at. And so, yeah, just what a monster. But here's his interview. This is his second interview. Now, obviously, the kids Charlie's being interviewed in the other room. But this is a 3-hour interview. Obviously, we're not going to watch the whole 3 hours. But here's just a couple of clips. And just to show you how deceitful and just how much he's not concerned. I mean, clearly someone who is innocent would be doing whatever they could to look for their wife, whoever is missing, their loved one. And here's some just questions, and here's Josh's, the way he answers just shows what a careless piece of garbage he is.
You can sit and speculate, but I don't have any clue.
Okay. What do you think I'm speculating?
I don't know.
Well, something must have crossed your mind for you to say that to me.
You guys, it's a fact, The closest people to a person is always the top suspects. So.
Okay, they're not suspects. There has to be some type of involvement to be a suspect. So it's not always like that, but we got to start If you were on my side, okay, let's do this real quick. If you're sitting where I am and I'm sitting where you are, okay, and my wife is missing, okay, who is the very first person, and who is that person going to be that you're going to spend the most time with, trying to get as much information from?
Probably the closest ones.
The closest ones to them?
Yeah.
Okay. And if I'm married, who would be the closest one to me? Would it be
I'm probably
the spouse,
the closest one,
or would it be the parents?
No, the spouse.
Okay. All right. Because I'm guessing you don't spend a whole lot of time with her mom, right? And would you if you lived next door to him?
Yeah, we would actually.
Okay.
I mean, she's kind of hard to deal with, but
who do you spend more time
she's
with?
She's okay, you know, but
no, I know.
She's okay, you know. And see how he starts going off on random tangents, and I don't know if that's ADD or just, but clearly he's just trying to kind of bide time and kind of derail the topic and the questions that he's being asked. And clearly he's trying to put in a scenario, you know, put yourself in my shoes, you know, what would you do and how can you help? And then, you know, he's mentioning the stepmother or mother-in-law. And then, you know, then of course Josh starts talking about, well, you know, she's okay. And, you know, I'm sure if he didn't stop him there, he would have probably rambled on for the next, 2 hours if poor Detective Ellis didn't try to keep him on track. Oops. What's that? Miranda Lee, thank you so much. Thanks, Chris. I love the mob crew. Thank you so much, Miranda. And thank you so much for being a member for 8 months. That's so awesome. Your support. Thank you so much.
I know.
Who would you spend more time with? Your wife or your mom? Your mom lives here.
My wife.
Okay. How about your sister or your wife?
It's the same.
Okay. So
I mean,
I don't
have any friends that I would spend more time with or anything.
Okay.
I mean, work maybe, but hey, that's work. You know,
Have
number of hours.
Okay. Have I told you that you're a suspect? I took.
Well,
photos,
I thought you were implying
of your hands.
You're saying, you know, you really made a big deal out of this
by asking you where you got a nick on your hand.
I thought you were trying to say I got some kind of defensive wounds, you know.
Okay, that's interesting. He used the words defensive wounds. So a little fun fact, backstory. I guess they used to like to watch like true crime shows, cold cases, and stuff like that. From what family members and friends say, because that's where they had learned that Josh had once talked about, hey, you know, because I guess he would point out all the stupid things of the way the criminals would get caught and would say, hey, you know, I would have done this or that. And one of them was, you know, if I was going to hide a body, I would put it down in a mine shaft. Well, it's just so interesting, you know, where they went, there's tons of mines, obviously, out in that area in our West Desert. We literally have one of the biggest man-made mines in the U.S. As far as on the side of a mountain, which is Kennecott copper mine. Anyway, I'm going to continue this. Oh, let me grab this real quick. Tom, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Happy early holidays. Good afternoon, Chris, Mods, and Mob Crew. I hope everyone is having a wonderful, beautiful Wednesday. This is the case that Heavy D tried to find the body. Yes, they've had 2 attempts that I know of. One, they did find some bones. I think it turned out to be like an animal. I think they found some clothing as well, but none of it turned out to be hers, unfortunately. And then, yeah, they went out to another area. But I can't remember the exact area, but they were searching some these little waterways, and unfortunately they didn't find anything. But yeah, love Heavy D. They're an amazing group.
I never said that though, did I?
Seemed implied.
Okay, but all I did was inquire about a nick on your hand.
Yeah,
And
my
they
dad
know
used to
the
work
kind
up
of,
at the copper mine.
You know, I mean, you've been worried about that ever since we got here today. You want me to take photos again of your
I
hands?
kind of do.
Okay.
Because
what does
I
it
want to
tell
have both photos available, you know?
Well, what does it tell you now? I mean, I haven't came in here with a camera, I haven't even worried about your hands, but you're still worrying about it.
I just want my second photos, man, because I was just to prove that they do it on their own.
Yeah, and that's,
I mean, this stuff, you know, some of these, if I don't take care of it fast enough, it just
And I
gets worse
understand.
and worse, and then chunks fall out.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm amazed that this
my
one
brother
did
has
that.
really dry skin as well, so I understand.
That's a chunk, a very small chunk. I mean, I don't feel them, you know?
Right.
Poor Detective Ellis. Look at him. He's just like, oh my God, is this guy being serious? Is this guy serious? His wife's missing. What would it be? 2 days now. He's more worried about his hands and everything. And okay, I'll check my phone. Where is it at? But yeah, and this is just what he tried to do for the 3 hours. And this part of Detective Ellis, which is, I don't know if he's retired or not, but he seems like such a great detective, and I feel bad. Did I miss? Yeah, I think I pulled up Sensei, and I might have took it off. Oh, I did. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes they just don't pull up. But thank you, Jennifer, so much. I did see it pull up, like the dance, but then I was waiting for it to pop up on my chat, and it never did. So sometimes it's they do and they don't. So thank you so much, Jennifer, and I appreciate everything you've done, and I hope you have a wonderful birthday this Sunday. We'll do a show or something, and. Sensei Wackadoodle, great host, great mods, great chat. Thanks, Chris. Thank you so much, Sensei. I hope you're doing well, and thank you so much for the continued support. You are so awesome. Thank you, guys. And I said I'm always looking out for it, but thank goodness for my mods watching my back. So back to this. Yeah, he's just more worried about his hands, and he's gonna probably, try to drag that on as much as he can.
I mean, I do if I would if I poured alcohol on them, but I don't feel them, so I don't know when they're coming.
Okay.
And like I say, I've only been looking at it the last day.
Yeah.
And actually paying attention.
Who should I look at as a suspect?
I can't think of anyone who's
Can't think of anyone. Who?
a little bit concerned.
Well, I'm concerned about your wife not being around. So let me step out for a second. I'll come back and grab you. Okay?
Grab me for what?
Well, if you don't want to talk,
Then what?
then I guess you can leave.
Look how worried he is. Like, whoa, what's going on next? I mean, clearly guilty. I mean, that is someone with a guilty conscience.
Okay.
I mean, you could leave anytime anyways.
Yeah. I mean, let me think about it for a couple days and...
Your wife is missing, Josh.
Yeah, but I've already...
And you want to think about it for a couple of days?
I've already answered everything. And I've told you I would answer everything. I don't understand why.
All right, well, are you willing to do a... Go.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're still... Are we done? Can I talk to you for a minute?
Okay.
Can I talk to you for a minute? We were talking before, I just gotta have to ask you something.
Well, all right.
Let me talk to him for a minute real quick. Have a seat. Sorry, I had to get on the phone, take care of a few things. We talked earlier about your concerns, right?
Yeah.
About your wife. You started kind of crying a little bit, telling me you were worried about some things. Okay. Here's my. I don't know if he advised you.
Yeah, I always before the end of the show, I always pull up because they have this new tab where I can look at people who have donated, and I always make sure. So if I don't get it when you guys do it, I will always get it at the end. But yeah, sometimes it just doesn't pop up in chat, even though I have live chat up. Sometimes, yeah, it just doesn't pop up. There's a question. Text mess. Did anyone ever go to Dinosaur National Park? So there's actually not a Dinosaur National Park out there. I think it's just a combination of just the kid's imagination. And there's a point we talked about earlier where he says, well, the crystals are at Dinosaur National Park. Well, we know where the crystals are at, and that is out there in that desert because there's a geobed of it. It's kind of a known location for people that are into that kind of stuff where you can just go out there for free and you don't have to go to mining or anything. It's just a natural location where you can dig into these hills and get, crystals and quartz. So when he says Dinosaur National Park, it's really just that area, and he's just kind of using his imagination. Just like how when he says, we took an airplane to go out there, obviously they didn't take an airplane, they took the van, but Josh would take the boys to the airport so they could watch the planes take off and stuff. So they think he's just kind of combining different, memories with imagination, and so you kind of have to kind of decipher it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is what I want you to understand about that, okay? Your rights are just not, all it is have you watched TV before?
Yeah.
You've seen that every show, the first thing they do is advise your rights. Does not mean anything. It does not mean that you're guilty of anything. It does not mean that you're being accused. All that it does is by law, we're required, anytime we talk to somebody, to advise them of the rights so they understand the rights. But at the same time, after I advise you of your rights, and what that does for me is it lets me know that you understand that we're just having a conversation here and you are free to go at any time. But for me to help you find your wife...
To be honest though, I was already feeling sick, and
let me ask you this.
I just want to go.
You want to go? Okay. Let me ask you this before you go. I'm going to sit right here. I want to talk to you.
So this is the second time he's trying to walk out.
How am I going to find your wife without your help?
Well, I told him I was willing to help with everything.
Go ahead. Well, have a seat. You might want to sit down for this one.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. And you came at a good time because we're going to talk about maybe you can help me with the Idaho.
I just spoke with some of... Sorry, this chair's screwed up. I just spoke with some of our other detectives. And you're going to have to wait here with us. You're not going to go anywhere. One of our detectives just interviewed your children. And your children are telling our detectives that Mom went with you guys last night. And that she didn't come back.
She did not go with us.
Okay, well, with that, just getting that information, you're not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to let you leave. I'm going to detain you. You sit right here. If you want a lawyer and you want to talk, or you want to change your mind and talk, or take a CBSA test.
That's a lie detector test.
Then we can do those things, but...
Now with that in mind.
They know that she didn't go with us.
Well,
So they confront him about the kids, because obviously the kids were getting interviewed, or Charlie anyway, who's the oldest of the two, who obviously said that, yes, Mommy did come with us, but she didn't come back. And so now they had just got wind of that, because obviously that was happening in a separate room. So obviously all the detectives are getting together. So just before he was about to leave, they found out all this information. So now they're going to try to question him, and they ask him about, well, do you think your son lies?
I think kids are very honest. That's one thing I've learned in the years of doing this job. That when kids talk to us, we'll listen because they're honest.
So that's just a short little clip of the 3 hours. There's a lot. So anyway, they tell him, because after hearing that, obviously they had their suspicions. Now they take his van, like I talked about earlier. They told him they're going to seize his van. You can wait a couple hours, and then we'll give it back to you. And in the meantime, we're also got a search warrant for your home. And so they're going to go do that. And so they finished up with the interview, told him, sit in the lobby or whatever, wait, and you'll get your van back. And I think it's too bad they messed up here, and I don't blame them, but it's just too bad they couldn't kept him there. Maybe either interview him while they're doing the van thing, because what they ended up doing is putting on a GPS tracker, and we'll kind of talk about what he does with the van later. That could be its own show in its own self, because he did a lot of suspicious stuff with that. But since he didn't want to wait, he ends up taking a taxi and going to the airport at 10 p.m., getting a rental car, a Ford Focus Silver. And from there, from basically midnight, so basically 12 a.m. Wednesday, he is literally gone for 18 hours. Gone for 18 hours, puts on 800 miles on this vehicle. And during this time is where I think he moved the body to where it's final at. He might have done it 2 times. We'll have to, I don't know if we get enough time to talk about that as well. There's so many layers, but so yeah, Josh goes to rent a vehicle instead of waiting to pick up his van. There was that picture of the bag where they found that
I didn't know where he was and heard from him.
The ride to the airport didn't take long. When the cab reached the terminal, Josh stepped out again into the sub-freezing cold. Josh left the airport in a silver Ford Focus.
Yeah, if anybody ended up in the Great Salt Lake, you would know. You would definitely know. It's only, well, now I don't even know. It might be at the deepest 5 feet. Yeah, it is drying up. It's actually very scary, because the Great Salt Lake it helps with our rain and stuff. And if that dries up, because obviously, moisture gets sucked up from the lake, and then that causes a reaction where then it rains again, and then the cycle continues. And if we don't have the lake, then we're not going to get the rain that we normally would get. And yeah, it could cause a huge problem. So this is a picture of the rental car.
What he did next will probably never be known for sure. But he didn't go home. Police were still there, serving a search warrant. And Josh knew it.
When I was in the interview, they authored a search warrant for the house, search warrant for the vehicle, and...
But on the return flight, they spotted something moving on the ground, just a few miles away from Simpson Springs.
But as what we found is this sheep herder in this sheep camp. And we landed the helicopter and we approached the individual, and...
So this is why I'm pretty darn sure that he never hid the body in Simpson Springs, because so while Josh is getting the rental car, I think they already went out to Simpson Springs once. Let's see. No, actually, this would have been the first time. So this would have been done on that Tuesday. So after that interview, if not, maybe that Wednesday. Yeah, it would have been that Wednesday after the interview, because the interview ended up pretty late. But they would end up out in Simpson Springs, and this would have been around the same time that Josh has now got this rental car, and we really don't know, except that he put 800 miles on it, which you cut that in half is 400 miles, so you got a 400-mile radius. But they're out there. They do corroborate that he was out there because of a sheep herder, and he explains this.
He did corroborate that Josh was out there. We didn't ask him any leading questions, and he said that, he did see a blue minivan and occupied by a white male, and he didn't know if he couldn't see that there was anybody else in there. And
I think it is, actually.
So we did support and corroborate that he was out there. He's on it, right? Or, stepping outside of the box in that situation, it's like, wait, he wanted me to know that.
But why would Josh have wanted to give away such a detail?
That's his truth, right? He wanted us to verify that he was out there.
So that's on Wednesday. Josh is
Hearing
driving
Act
around
concerned Ellis.
This 18-hour period he's missing, and puts 800 miles. So obviously you would cut that in half, because you got to drive and come back. So that gives you approximately 400 miles, probably even a little bit less, but we'll just say 400 miles. that is the radius. What you see, that is pretty much the 400-mile radius from the center of Salt Lake International Airport of where he would have rented the car. So you got the whole state of Utah, almost the whole state of Wyoming, most of Idaho, pretty much the entire state of Nevada, a little bit of Arizona, Colorado, a slight piece of New Mexico. My theory is there's two theories, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. I've got some footage of one of the areas that I believe she could be at.
He called Josh's mom, Teresa, at about 4 on Wednesday afternoon to ask if she had heard from him, and she said no.
Eventually, he establishes contact with Teresa, and she calls me, and I get his new phone number. I call him, and he's in Tremont, Utah, and it's a fight with him over the phone to get him to come back to the police department.
Tremont in Utah sits about 80 miles north of West Valley City, right on the fastest route between West Valley and Josh's dad's house in.
So yeah, this is interesting. So obviously at the tail end of his 18 hours and 800-mile journey, he's in Tremonton. So I think he did go up this I-84 north. Maybe could have met up with his father. I think the possible culprits in this could be not only Josh, but either his father and or his brother Michael. But yeah, so when he and of course he goes to Tremonton to activate a new phone. So obviously he has no cell until he activates his new phone, which obviously, so he's got a rental car with no cell phone during that time, so he couldn't be tracked. So obviously he knew what he was doing.
In South Hill, Washington. While in Tremonton, Josh activated a new cell phone. That was roughly 18 hours after he left the airport with the rental car on Tuesday night. To this day, no one can say where he was or what he was doing during those 18 hours. Josh told Jennifer he had driven laps around Salt Lake City, getting off and on the freeways at random. And in fact, Josh was still on the road when Ellis called him, telling him to come pick up his minivan.
He says he doesn't trust me, I'm going to arrest him, and so I've got to go through this dog and pony show with him and convince him, look, I'm not going to arrest you, I'm not taking you to jail. If you didn't do anything wrong, why do you have this guilty conscience? Get back here and get your van, otherwise I'm going to tow it.
I like this Detective Ellis. I mean, he seems like a very down-to-earth guy, and has done a lot of interviews. But yeah, so obviously since, they were only going to have his van for a few hours to search it and then put on this GPS device, he never picked it up that night, that Tuesday night. And now it's Wednesday, and detective, obviously hasn't heard from him until he talks to him once Josh gets his new phone activated in Tremonton. And then he explains, you need to come pick up your van before we tow it. And then, of course, he's a little hesitant because he thinks he's going to get arrested. And then, of course, he's wondering, well, why are you so worried about getting arrested? Only I would think a guilty person would think that way. And yeah.
And I shared that with him because I know to this
after he left the airport with the rental car on Tuesday night. To this day, no one can say where he was or what he was doing during those 18 hours. Josh told Jennifer he had driven laps around Salt Lake City, getting off and on the freeways at random. And in fact, Josh was still on the road when Ellis called him, telling him to come pick up his minivan.
He says he doesn't trust me, I'm going to arrest him, and so I've got to go through this dog and pony show with him and convince him, look, I'm not going to arrest you, I'm not taking you to jail. If you didn't do anything wrong, why do you have this guilty conscience? Get back here and get your van, otherwise I'm going to tow it. And I shared that with him because I know to this point that he doesn't like to spend money on things that he doesn't want to spend money on. He'll spend money on acetylene torches and generators and stuff like bipolar stuff, right? Bipolar purchasing. But he was really upset we broke his window He was more upset that we broke his window into his house than his wife missing.
Josh remained reluctant. Phone records would later show he drove past Susan's work just as if he were there to pick her up after her shift. Then he drove past his own work, from which he'd been absent without leave for 3 straight days. Then he went home.
Eventually he does. He shows up. He gets his van on his time. I think it was like 7 o'clock at night. I was so upset because it was my daughter's birthday, right? Yeah, he would interrupt everybody else's lives.
Ellis gave Josh the keys. Josh locked the minivan's doors, then went back to his rental car. That's when Ellis first found out about the Ford Focus.
And that's when we learn, we get the plate off the rental car and we follow up with it. And okay, this is going to be our break, right? Now. And that's this whole story, man. No breaks. Anytime you think you might have something, nada.
Yeah, it's a bummer because apparently the car got rented. By the time they found this out, the car had been rented again and been driven. So obviously any kind of evidence that you could search could have been contaminated. They still searched it, but obviously it was a bummer. And obviously, since he did take this big trip or whatever, it's just too bad that it was with this car and not with the van that had the GPS, because if that would have happened, we may have found Susan a long time ago.
More on the rental car in just a minute. First, Ellis asked Josh if he'd be willing to come in and take a CVSA test.
Lie detector test. So yeah, they do another mass search, I think on the 9th or the 10th. Let's see, let me look at the
First doors
out of it. And
first.
Back to that. Yeah, so it's either the 9th or the 10th that they do the Simpson Springs search. Obviously looking for Susan Powell, checking mines, and they would do this throughout the years. So this is me driving.
The next morning, the GPS beacon Ellis had hidden on Josh.
So I don't know if it's that weekend or the next week. I think it's that weekend, so not long. It's been maybe almost a week since she disappeared. Now he's got his van back. Now they have the tracking device on it, so now they can track him. And if it goes, anytime the vehicle's moving, it indicates and lets law enforcement, whoever's overseeing the task, and others that are involved with the project, they get notices whenever the vehicle's moving. And they'll even get text messages, especially if the vehicle's going out of town, out of state. So they're always getting updated. It's almost real-time GPS, so they can know exactly where this vehicle's at. And he does so many suspicious things. Like I said, I could do just a video on all the things he does with this van in the next few days, making these weird stops. But this one's very interesting to me in what he does. So he's on I-80, and I'll show on the map here in a minute. But this is actually I-80. This is me driving.
Josh's minivan sent out an alert. It was moving, going west on Interstate 80.
I think everybody that was involved in the investigation up to that point was somewhat excited, I guess. I mean, because why is he going out west? Why is he just out of the clear blue driving out west on I-80?
Detectives raced to their cars. Right away, Ellis noticed something odd.
He would clean himself.
He's not talking about soap. This is counter-espionage lingo.
He would be driving down I-80, and he would just take an exit. So he would get off, say at Clive, and then he'd turn around and go back the other way, take the exit, get off, go around. I mean, he would get on and off the freeway, see if somebody was tailing him.
That is so weird and very suspicious. The fact that he's doing that on I-80, that's why I think there's 2 freeways that I think that there's a possibility that Susan Powell is not too far from these 2 major interstates. And one of them is I-80.
What Josh didn't realize is West Valley Police had called in help from the DEA, which put an airplane into the sky to watch him from above. The detectives kept their distance as Josh drove out past the last fringes of the city.
From there all the way out to Wendover, Nevada, it's straight salt flats. There's nothing out there. There are exits here and there, but there's really nothing to go visit.
Josh's minivan cruised across the salt flats, past the famous Bonneville Speedway racecourse, and into the casino town of West Wendover, Nevada. He drove to the far side of Wendover and parked outside of a Smith's grocery store. It didn't make much sense. But maybe he was there to use a payphone, or a burner cell phone the police didn't know about. He stayed there for about 20 minutes, then returned to the freeway and headed back east. After about 30 eastbound miles, Josh took an exit at Clive. It's a desolate spot, far from anywhere.
This is
the minivan rolled to a stop in a quarry on the north side of the interstate. Josh stayed there for about 2 hours.
I think he personally
This is
did.
very interesting. The Clive area, which I have footage of, but unfortunately I couldn't find it in time. But I am going to, because we're going to take a deeper dive into his, in the next show, all of his spots that he took. Because obviously, this guy here was able to get, FOIA request and get the documentation. And it's very fascinating, all these stops that he took. But the one in Clive is very interesting.
Did it to see if we were going to follow him, if we had eyes on him. I think it was kind of one of his things to say, okay, let's see what the cops do.
Real close.
And if they are going to follow me.
After Josh finally left, a detective managed to get a glimpse into the minivan.
Where I'm at is if I go 1 hour north, that's where Dylan Rounds went missing. If I go west, kind of southwest, is where Aiden Clune went, and that's about an hour away from exactly where I'm at, just about. And then, yeah, it's a possibility that Susan Powell was dumped somewhere off this freeway system, which I'm going to pull up here in just a minute.
It appeared that Josh wasn't alone, that maybe someone was with him in the front passenger seat. Question was, who? It wasn't clear. The detectives monitored Josh's movements as he drove all the way back to Salt Lake City and to the office of Defense Attorney Scott Williams. They broke off their tail and raced to the gravel pit.
That was a little exciting. As soon as he left, obviously we sent some guys over to kind of check it out. There was fresh snow on the ground, so we could see where he had walked and stuff like that. And, we searched that entire area. And we used specialized dogs as well.
The dogs sniffed around but didn't find anything. It's worth noting about 2 months later, when the weather was warmer, the police returned with 9 dogs. 4 of them showed interest at a single spot within the Clive gravel pit. It was not a grave site, but the investigators reasoned it might have been a place where somebody had bled. Was that person Susan? They couldn't say. Tips flooded the West Valley City Police Department as news coverage of the case continued to crescendo. Detectives...
So, yeah, that's just outside of Wendover. It's called the Tree of Life. For my members, I've done a couple videos on this. It's really beautiful. This was built by, I think, like a millionaire, billionaire or something. Somebody who used to go out to, because obviously here in Utah we can't gamble, so we have to go to Nevada. And instead of going to Las Vegas, which is further down southwest, it's easier for us. Northwest, there's just on the border of Utah and Nevada, there's a little town called Wendover, and it's very, very popular for us. And yeah, that's where we go for those wanted to go gambling. And anyway, so obviously there's not a lot to see. I think it's a beautiful drive, but yeah, you see a lot other than this. If you took this out, obviously you just see a lot of dirt and mountains way out in distance, but there's not a lot to look at. It's more or less the same, even though I think it's still such a beautiful drive. But yeah, so this guy decided to put what's called the Tree of Life out there. It's really cool. Let me play this last couple minutes, and then we'll look at Clive, Utah, and I'll just kind of give you my final thoughts here.
Learned about Josh's spending spree, how he had dropped hundreds of dollars on an acetylene torch the day before Thanksgiving. They heard from the nursery worker who had advised Josh not to buy a roll of plastic tree wrap because it wouldn't help him mend a broken branch. Both of those purchases were suspicious in retrospect. As detectives were tailing Josh to and from Wendover on Friday, others chased down these new leads. They headed to the airport with the license plate number for the Ford Focus Josh had rented, only to learn it had been rented out again. The rental company's paperwork, though, showed Josh had put 807 miles on the car. Cut that number in half, and you have a radius of just over 400 miles. That was the absolute farthest Josh could have driven and come directly back from the parking garage at Salt Lake City International Airport. If you take a map and draw a circle centered on the airport with that radius, it covers an area of more than 500,000 square miles.
It's big.
It's nearly twice the size of the state of Texas. The circle would stretch almost from Phoenix, Arizona to Helena, Montana, or from Denver, Colorado to Reno, Nevada. In other words, the area Josh could have visited during his missing 18 hours was immense. But police...
So yeah, there's a video. Let's see. We started at 5. Ooh, wow, we went 2 hours. No, I don't think... They may have put some spotlights up on it. I always pass it during the daytime. I know I passed it a couple times during the night, but they may have put some spotlights on that. I wouldn't be surprised. There have been some changes to it throughout the years. In the beginning, I didn't think there was a fence around it, which obviously was probably a good thing that they put that around. Yeah, if they do, they're not big, but yeah, that would be kind of cool to see it lit up at night. Because yeah, it's really cool because it's just in the middle of nowhere. So anyway, one of my theories, and I'm sure it's not just my theory, but many others, but obviously one of his trips, he was acting very weird, as we just listened to, and they've got the tracker on his vehicle. They have a plane or a helicopter that's actually following him. They're also following him, and he's doing these weird things where he's driving I-80 and then he gets off on a ramp, turns around, starts heading east, and then gets off on the next exit and then continues heading west. But he got off on Clive and he headed out, let's see, was it this area, somewhere out here down south, and they did get a couple of hits on the dogs of what they believe may have been like where a body may have been but moved. So they do believe it could have been a temporary spot that she could have been, or she could still be out there. But I think they're the two interstates that, in my opinion, and unfortunately I don't want to drag it on too much longer because we've been 2 hours, but we'll dive into it more in the next show. But I think there's a good possibility that she could be not far off one of these exits. There's not a lot of them. And yeah, you could just travel, a couple miles. And look, I mean, it's nothing out here. There is a military base somewhere out here. There's a couple of them, but other than that, yeah, it's just, as you can see, there's nothing. Oh yeah, here's the testing range right here. So there would be areas where obviously this would be fenced off to a point because obviously it'd be doing military testing. But like I said, it'd be easy to hide a body, and it may never ever be found. The other one would be is this I-84. So I-84, here, let me switch to the other one here so I can see it better. So if you're coming out of Salt Lake, so if you remember, obviously his father lived in Washington, Puyallup, and if you take this I-84, it, for the most part, will take you up to Seattle, Washington, up here. So if you take it up, let's see, here's Washington. I think Puyallup, it's a mouthful. Here, as a matter of fact, let me do this. This is actually... oh gosh, I spelled that wrong already. So as you can see, here's if you travel from Salt Lake and you travel, you take the I-84 for the most part, dips in the I-82, but takes you up to the Puyallup, Washington area. Now, there's a theory that that his dad could have met him halfway, and that they disposed of Susan somewhere along the way on I-84, which I think is another possibility. And there's more things to support that theory, which is they found a car that was that belonged to Josh's brother, who now has taken his life, but he tried to have it destroyed at a salvage yard because it broke down on the way to, I think, either Salt Lake or Washington when they were moving. And they noticed when they went to the salvage yard, they found the vehicle, and let's see, do I have a picture of it? The cadaver dog did hit on the trunk area, which they believed there could have been a body in the trunk. So it's possible that his brother-in-law did help him at some point moving and disposing of the body. But that's a whole other show. There's, like I said, so many layers, but yeah, that would be my my overall theories on just the possibilities. I-80 somewhere, or I-84 somewhere in Idaho. Sandy says they test intercontinental ballistic missiles there. Yeah, it's top secret. As a matter of fact, I think, I'm not sure if it's that one, but we've all heard of Area 51. Well, one of our military bases out here is considered Area 52. I'm not sure if that particular one is the one they talk about, but it's out there. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, if you have any questions before we finish up, I just want to say thanks to everybody for showing up and taking the time to watch the show. I'm going to be doing a lot of shows I got to make up. I've been out for a week, and so I'll probably be doing live shows the rest of the week, every day. I probably do a members tomorrow and another regular show, so I may do 2 shows, 1 member, 1 regular. Laugh out loud, you pronounce it like my dad, Chris. Puyallup. Yeah, that's we have Tooele out here, and let me show you. I should have pulled it up and then had someone try to. Where is Tooele? Tooele's over here. Yeah, if you just look at this word. Oh, I don't know if you can see it okay, but yeah, Tooele. You should see how people try to pronounce this. Thule. As a matter of fact, Ghost Adventures. I forget his name. The main guy from Ghost Adventures. He butchered it. Oh my gosh, I almost broke a rib when I heard him try to pronounce it. But yeah, we all have those towns that are just like, how in the hell do you pronounce this? So anyway, let's see what else we got in chat. Yeah, it's a pity that they just couldn't keep him there when they put that device on, because he clearly did a lot of shady stuff after he got his van back. He drove to all these little neighborhoods and disposing garbage, and then would drive to another apartment complex and literally, because the GPS was up to date, like they knew exactly where it was at, like where in the apartment complex this was at. And he would drive to these condos or apartment complexes and drive right to their gas or garbage cans, and it was clear he was dumping stuff, and it would just look normal because that's, I live in an apartment. If I'm going to go get rid of my trash, depending on where the trash can is, luckily it's pretty close to me, but some people, they're kind of a little bit further away, so they'll just put their trash, they'll have their trash bag and they'll put it in their car, or my one buddy, he would just put it on his hood or something, and then drive it, just drive around the corner and then dump it off and then go drive back to your apartment, because, who wants to walk, for 10 minutes or whatever, carrying trash. So, oh, Angel, that's good. My dad worked at Tooele at the base. Oh, like the military base out there? That's pretty cool. Oh, excuse me. Alan Hinkle gifted 1 Mob Crew membership. Oh my gosh, Thistle got it. Wasn't Thistle asking for it earlier? Wasn't you the one asking and you're the one that got it? That's crazy. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Alan, for the gifted membership. That's so awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I haven't taken anybody. Just kidding. I still got to make that into a t-shirt. So anyway, before we go, shout out to the wonderful members who help support this show, and then of course to all of you. If you haven't, please hit that like button before you go. It really helps spread the awareness, and we're gonna do a part 2. Geneva is nuts now, Chris. Have you seen that area now? Geneva. I don't think so. Interesting. I will have to check that out. Okay, I thought I saw one more thing let me just double check here. I'm not missing anything. Oh, see Tom's thing. Yeah, there's certain things that don't pop up. Yeah, I think he was a little too nice. But I really like him. Yeah, it's too bad they weren't tougher on him. I agree. I think he's just an overall nice guy, and yeah, it's too bad. They should have pressured the shit out of him. But there was a lot of failures on so many parts when it comes to this case. So, but thank you so much, Tom, man. Good to see you. Thank you so much for the support. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without you guys. So thank you so much. Zach. Yeah, Zach Bagans. Thank you so much. Love that show. But yeah, so we'll be back on tomorrow. I'm going to probably do 2 shows, 1 member, 1 regular, because got to catch up because I've been sick, and so. Geneva Still Vineyard. Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I haven't seen that area for a while. Yeah, but I bet it's changed. So, thank you to my wonderful mods, Jennifer, D, Copper Horse, Karen. Thank you guys so much. And I will probably do an earlier show so I don't run into Steve's show. I don't know. I got to decide. Either I'm going to do early or it'll be starting about this time. I got to see. I'll have to see what his schedule is. So, anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful night. And I'm going to go ahead and play the outro. And we will see you guys tomorrow. So, I love you guys. Thank you so much.